Gonna go. All right. I didn't get the
All
announcement.
right. I didn't get the All right. Uh,
It's hilarious. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay,
only
great.
one.
All right, only one. Super. Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for November 15th, 2023. Brooks Townsend is out today, so I'll be the special guest moderator. First, we'll start with a few key community announcements. If you didn't have a chance to join KubeCon last week in Chicago, Illinois, it was absolutely phenomenal. The talks for Cloud Native WASM Day are out. There are multiple talks featuring wasmCloud and the wasmCloud ecosystem, starting with Bailey Hayes and Kate Goldenring in their keynote, where they demonstrated WebAssembly components operating across multiple runtimes. The sort of theme for the day seemed to absolutely revolve around WebAssembly components and this general excitement for them. And there were great talks from the Istio team, from Taylor and Dan, from WasmEdge, and a variety of other folks. So check out your favorites and let us know. I'd also just point out that it's already time to start thinking about KubeCon EU. Call for proposals for KubeCon EU is open, and they are due on Sunday, November the 26th, which is the Sunday after Thanksgiving in the United States. So there's not a lot of time left, less than 2 weeks to start getting those together. The submissions for CNCF WASM Day 2024 in the EU, which will be a half-day event this year, will be announced later. With that being said, let's turn to our agenda for our community meeting. We've got a handful of items that are out here. Taylor, are you feeling up to talking through any of these, or you want me to do my best?
I can probably get through them.
Okay.
I'm coming to you today as a total, absolute mess of a voice, but I am fine otherwise, so don't worry about me. Um, it's conference voice to the max. I don't quite know exactly what it is. Anyway, there's a couple different things we have coming up here that are either proposed changes or current draft or open PRs around changes, things we want to add to the control interface. These are some things that are going to be very useful for developers and for platform operators. And so I just wanted to go through a brief intro about what each of them are. If you go to the community meeting notes, you'll have a link to each one of these. The first one is about adjusting labels, which I think Connor might be in here, so I'm going to try to delegate as much as possible. Connor, did you want to give a quick overview if you're available?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, this is part of a cluster of issues slash features slash proofs of concept whereby we can augment the host's control interface to be more dynamic. So the first thing that I worked on was updating the host to accept label updates via the control interface. You might be asking why this is important. Why would I want to label a host foo at runtime? There's a couple reasons, but they both have to do with scheduling. So in a world where a host can get labels applied dynamically, this could let WATM do more intelligent orchestration of payloads. You could imagine things like the host being underutilized and applying a label like pick me or vice versa. Likewise, this feature could enable something that we've been tentatively calling wash, drain, and cordon, which I believe is lifted that terminology from technologies like Kubernetes. And this would allow for marking a host as, hey, don't schedule anything on this anymore. It's now like a lame duck. It's being drained, and it's eventually being marked for shutdown. So a few different use cases that this would enable.
Any discussion on that? I mean, going back, Kevin, I remember, I seem to remember you talking about the immutability of hosts and labels. What's your perspective on this one?
Yeah, I've kind of been talking about it in the chat channel. The main reason why originally the idea behind those labels being immutable was for both security and consistency reasons. The main thing is that if the use case was that if some tooling or human makes a decision based on the labels that a host has, and then those labels change, does that invalidate the decision that was made prior to that? And I don't think there's really a good answer for that. There's certainly no good answer for that in the Kubernetes world either. The security thing that I worry about, and it's likely just me being too paranoid, is, let's say a host is running, and let's say a host is running, and then the labels change in order to, potentially draw or attract scheduled, WebAssembly modules or actors or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, the consequences for a malicious actor being able to change labels on a host is probably not really all that bad, considering that the workloads that are running on the host are already secure, isolated, untrusted WebAssembly modules. So, worst case scenario is someone could run a WebAssembly module that they didn't expect. So it's not too bad. But yeah, I definitely think that using labels to do things like flag a host as being drained or cordoned off or whatever. Those are some really good use cases. But yeah, I haven't thought through all of the edge cases around mutable host labels. But long story short is the initial reason why those were immutable was to prevent unknown potential security vulnerabilities.
Connor, are you thinking, Taylor, you got your hand up here, but let me ask a quick question over to Connor. Connor, are you thinking that this would be, an API where you can just, update random labels, or are you thinking through that you're going to come up with 3 or 4 states that you could enable via flags, and then the label would take effect, like calling it that would turn on the drain flag, or a dead flag, or to be killed flag, or something like that. What's your? I didn't spend any time reading this. My apologies. What's your kind of general thought there?
Yeah, that's a good question. The implementation currently is very basic, and it's unsecured in the sense that if you have access to the control interface topics, you can at will adjust a host's labels. I made that decision primarily for simplicity, and also because it's not exactly an escalation of privileges. The control interface is a flat access level today. In other words, if you have the ability to ask the host for its inventory, you also have the ability to tell the host to shut down. This doesn't change that. I think there is probably a broader conversation to have about more fine-grained access to the control interface, whether certain things should be blocked off. But as written, this is just a very flexible system for adding labels. Now, the second part of your question is like these levels and cordoning. And that's what I was alluding to as one of the potential use cases here, is that dynamic labels could be used as a building block for kind of higher order functionality for the host, one of which being, I want to mark this host as being cordoned. I want to drain a workload off of it. Applying a label could be an instrumental action taken to achieve that effect.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that I think there's a good security concern here. I think the probably best way for us to maybe move forward with this, I was thinking is, like Connor said, everything's already flat. Like you can already just stop hosts if you have access to the control interface. So I'm thinking that if we go down this route and people are okay with that, I think we merge it in as is. But I think there is a discussion to be had around like doing like maybe like wasmBus.admin or something like that has like admin level topics, so that we can restrict the the tokens you give out, basically the access, the JWTs and seeds that you have out to specific users or to specific people who have the power to actually use those admin topics. So I think that like this isn't like opening up, I think, any additional security things, more just bringing back to the forefront, kind of like what Kevin was mentioning. Like this is a problem that technically a lot of other things have. And I think we can maybe have a discussion around swapping some of these out to be admin topics. And so that's kind of my thought around where it stands right now.
Any further discussion on this one, or we still got 3 more to maybe walk through today, and we move on to the next one. The next one is actor config, and this is something I know Taylor's had on his punch list for a long time. Mr. Toad, Mr. Taylor, do you feel like speaking to this one?
Yep, I can do that. I just want to point out that the text I have here up top is the 2 main motivations here. Number one, we've been needing stuff like this for a while. There's a lot of people, like one of the core things that I think about is like being able to, for example, specify the name of the link definition and then be able to fetch that from config so that you can, or like the link name essentially, so you can use that. You could use an actor on multiple links without having to hard code the link name inside of it. But there's many other things where you might have config, such as secrets or whatever. Now, the way I have this set up, it will actually work for providers once we get the stuff together for like WASI providers and other things. But right now, the other effort here is this is something we need in the WebAssembly space in general, and there have been some previous efforts, but nothing currently going around the like getting config to a WebAssembly module. And so this allows us to say like, hey, we're using this. We're going to use this and basically bring the interface wholesale over towards basically wasmCloud and say, hey, this is what we have. Let's start from here because we know it works. We're using it. And then like iterate from there. And that way we can use it as the basis for standards. So that way the interop story is better in between because the way each host is going to give, not wasmCloud hosts in general, are going to implement this or give config to the things running in it is going to, like, how they get that config is going to be very wildly. So we need some sort of interface that allows it to be easily run anywhere. So we figured we'd start with it because we need it now. It'd be good to have, and then we can roll this into. So this is going to be an experimental thing. It adds a bunch of new topics to the control interface that allows you to set config that just stores it in a new NATS key value bucket that's created at runtime right alongside the lattice data one. And then you're able to insert config and delete config from there. And it's all namespaced per entity ID. So actor, provider. So that's that's how this is all set up. But I wanted it, like, I figured this is just, it's clearly marked as experimental in the API. When I add it to docs, I'll add it as experimental as well so people know that there's this caveat that we could change, for example, that this becomes a wasmCloud interface, or we could change what the interface looks like. It's also designed to be, like, right now we know it's going to store in our NATS key value thing, but we also know that people could want to like plug in Vault or whatever. So the idea is that we could probably swap this out with like a different provider in the future, even though right now it's a built-in. So right now, it's just the very basic to get those things working. It's going to be just for new component-based actors. It's not going to be backported to the old system. And like I said, it's going to add a whole host of new topics, all under basically like the config get and then like config put and deletes. So that's kind of the overview here.
Yeah. Good. Any discussion on this one or suggestions? I think this one feels like just such a slam dunk.
Taylor, can you show what it looks like for an actor to use the config?
Taylor, you muted, but I imagine you're telling Liam to
Oh.
go to the files changed.
Yes, I am. Sorry. My computer keeps trying to restart for security updates, so I'm in a constant fight with it for the rest of this call. So if you go to down to the tests section further down where it says actors, REST, built-in component reactor, go to lib.rs.
Right here?
Yep, that's the one. So you can actually see right here where it says wasmCloud bus guest config get, and the wasmCloud bus guest config get all. So that will, because we know which actor this is coming from, we make sure it gets only the config that it's allowed, that's set up for it. And then you're able to get specific values or get all the values. And if you look in the bus.wit file just down a little bit on the left sidebar, click on that. Scroll down to guest config. That's what guest config looks like.
So do you specify configs per actor, or can it be a combination of actor and labels as well?
It's per actor right now. I was keeping this really simple. We can probably make this more complex in the future. I know that Kevin had his hand up though.
Sorry, Kev, go ahead.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that I think we need to watch out for here is in violating the stateless rules. So if, let's say, somebody writes an actor and it calls get all, and it stores that in a static variable, and then the config changes, you now have an actor that is caching out-of-date config, and you run the risk of having different instances of the same actor storing or retaining different information. So at the very least, I think it needs to be documented that those function calls should be invoked on a per handler basis, and that people should not use global variables or anything like that to try and retain that or cache it, because I mean that's basically the main reason why I didn't implement this to begin with, was the risk of people accidentally producing divergent actors.
Is there anything we can do outside of documentation to maybe like help avoid that?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that is there's nothing at the WebAssembly level, but you could hide the WIT functions behind some sort of config interface, and even if people just, there's really nothing you can do to keep people from caching the results of one of these functions. It's just it's a foot gun.
Dave, you got your hand up, bud? Go for it.
Yeah. Do we have a version attached to the configs on that stuff? Because the biggest problem I can see is I don't know about the config as far as writing to it, especially when we get in the whole label thing or anything like that. But some sort of atomic, check version and then write type of thing, or check version before using or something like that. In other words, I'm creating a decision based on whatever version I pulled the config by. I was just wondering if there was an incremental version on that as changes are made.
We could add that. It does not currently support that. The way it does right now is it just overwrites the value in the key value bucket, but because it's key value bucket, we could version it. So like that's I'd love to maybe capture some of that if you have like some examples, kind of like pseudocode. If you want to drop it on this issue, that'd be, or this PR.
Yeah,
that would be really good.
Yeah, I've got some examples from another system. I'll try to see if I can hunt that down. I've got a pretty full schedule today, but I'll see what I can do.
Let me share an example here, and you guys can tell me what how I should think about this. This is a fictional example, and this is actual, like, for people that that are just dialing in, like, we didn't plan this. This is actually just a question I have. All right, so I'm building a test example here. Let me give you the scenario. I've got a distributed telecommunication company that is spread out between France and Germany. And when infrastructure spun up here, it's spun up with a city and a country code. So for location. Now, in this particular case, we've got edges, towers, and cores here. And I would be curious if I could configure code that's running in a different country, maybe with some different parameters. Maybe I want to load like some different language settings, or maybe I would want to like give them different logging destinations, right? Like oh wow, that's apparently Google loves that, Zoom loves that too. It's giving me like emojis. So I'm unclear what the approach I could take here, beyond doing something crazy, which I was demonstrating. I was just kind of like playing around here in my contrived demo. I've got different versions of this that spin up the same actor across all of them, across everything tagged as a tower, in which case I would maybe want to have like, a version config, maybe pass it differently for Germany and France, because they need to log to different country-based locations, so data stays there. I've got a different version here where I'm actually loading different, versions, one called DE, one called FR, that actually have like statically compiled language settings in them. It doesn't feel like this is the right approach, though. It feels like this should be stuff I could configure at runtime, depending on the sort of like properties of where I live. What's the I could see how I can footgun myself here multiple ways. What do we kind of, how do we tell people how to do this? There's a good discussion in chat. Let's see. I don't know. Taylor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the thing is there's an option here where config gets pushed to an actor, and that means that anything that uses config has to implement something that can receive the config. And so like that's the kind of thing that we're gonna have to maybe have a little bit more discussion about. We don't have to keep bogging it down here. We can maybe have some more discussion on that PR and in other places. The main thing is, like Jordan was also pointing out, like a race condition in a push situation where you push config to an actor and then halfway through you push a config update while those actors are spinning up, and then the other actors get a different one. Yeah, and it will have to be an export if the host calls it, which means there has to be a handler, and then you end up in the same situation where if it's a handler, then there's going to have to be some sort of static variable that the actor stores its state in, when it receives updates. So there's trade-offs here for each side.
So it sounds to me
it's thorny.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's room for a really great discussion here on GitHub to kind of dial through some of the complexities here. But it's such a great idea, Taylor. I'm excited to see where this one goes. Let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Lame duck, Corden. Was this you? Oh, Jordan.
Yeah, I think I actually covered it, but Jordan, do you have more to say about the use case?
No, it's essentially just the same thing Kubernetes and everyone else does. If I want to take down a host and push its workload somewhere else temporarily, so maybe I can update or edit something locally, then this essentially gives us that power. I forget the use. I don't know, 2 weeks ago. God, I've slept since then. I forget my use case for it, but it'll come back to me some point. I needed to do this, and I don't remember why.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, and then this last one, we've got the dynamic log levels coming across, which I don't know that Dan's on the call today. Does somebody want to represent this? I know there's actually been.
I can take this one.
I think there's been a ton of other work you may want to speak to around this one as well.
Maybe I shouldn't take this one because I'm not sure what that alluded to. But this came up as just my understanding is yet another example of wanting to dynamically update host config. As Dan describes in the issue right now, if you want to say enable debug logs from a host or traces, the only way to do that is to actually restart the host. Now that we have WADM managing workloads, that's not the worst because it's as simple as shutting the host off and spinning a new one up. But it would be even better to, with the current workload, be able to adjust log levels. Actors are stateless, but providers aren't, and providers can have things in memory that we might like to poke at for debug purposes. So there's a bunch of operator type scenarios where having this feature would be really handy.
Any other discussion on this one on dynamic log levels? All right. Maybe some other community news just to mention. The incubating proposal for wasmCloud continues to march along. So we're hoping to get a vote scheduled sometime in the next few weeks to pull wasmCloud up to incubating and perhaps even to wasmCloud 1.0. There is work happening behind the scenes for WASM Day EU. We're trying to pull together the program committee. If you have any interest, feel free to message me on Slack or email liam.randall@gmail.com or wherever you feel is the best way to get a hold of me. And we can get you submitted for possible inclusion on the program committee. A WASM IO 2024 is on 2 weeks before KubeCon, and WASMCon US is booked. I think and dates will be announced shortly. I want to say it's been pulled back to May this year, but it should be an exciting time for WebAssembly in 2024 with the component model coming across. Bailey, you're coming up to I feel like the final turn here with WebAssembly standards. Anything you'd want to speak to there?
I think you guys should tune in to the Bytecode Alliance community stream. It's the last Tuesday of this month. If everything goes according to plan, there will be some fun and announcements, aka the first reference implementation of the component model and WASI Preview 2 will be done. So fingers crossed that we hit that. We're still working. But it's feeling on track. And then after that, we will have a lot of focused effort on the JavaScript component tooling for running basically the WASI Preview 2 definitions inside Node.js. And that would be the second reference implementation. Once we have both of those complete, that is when we can officially say WASI Preview 2 is ready to go out the door.
Do I have the right? That's a JCO. Is that the thing that you're speaking
Yep.
about?
JavaScript component tooling. We have lots of activity, like 19 hours ago here. What is taking some time, getting resources implemented fully within the JavaScript component tooling. And that's both for creating components that can compile, like taking JavaScript and compiling that to a WebAssembly component. And then JCO also is the piece that facilitates letting us run in JavaScript runtimes. It has work for both running in browsers and Node.js, but right now, so that we can hit the Preview 2 launch date with the goal still being before the end of the year, then we're focusing on the Node.js side of this so that we know that we have 2 completed reference implementations, and then the browser one would, quickly follow on. And so a lot of the work, for example, is taking wasmHTTP and making that work with the Fetch API.
Well, that is exciting, Bailey. Sounds like you've got your hands full for the next few weeks. Do you have any calls to action or anywhere where people can jump in to help you out and help out the community?
I would say that we have cut our release candidate versions for all of the WIT interfaces that are in the WASI CLI and the WASI HTTP worlds. We said that Preview 2 is done once we have 2 independent worlds and all of their dependencies are ready with 2 reference implementations. I would say try it out, give us feedback. The best way to do it, we were on pretty recent version of wasmTime of those interfaces. I imagine that we'll probably need to update in about a week-ish, maybe 2 weeks, to pick up just a few changes that I know that happened over the last week. But we're very close to the bleeding edge. I really want to make sure that we're happy with what we have. I think we are. So the call to action would be maybe at the end of the month, party with me and let people know that we hit this milestone. I think would be the most helpful thing.
All right. Well, that's exciting. Well, let's open the floor. Anyone have any other WebAssembly milestones or announcements that they'd want to make today? All right. Well, I think we're about at the end of the agenda today. It's been a good meeting. Did anybody have a demo? I didn't ask for a demo. I'm so sorry. I dropped the ball. I'm out of
I
practice.
was really hoping to demo some stuff I'm doing with Wash, but I didn't get it done in time. It'll be a nice little surprise for next week, right before Thanksgiving. I should have it done.
I guess I'd take this opportunity to call out one that the latest version of Wash has lots and lots of nice DevX improvements. And in particular, Ahmed, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, has been a huge help in closing out a bunch of issues that we file. And I think that it really shows in the end experience of using Wash functions. Of note, like Wash call is back, y'all. We had to take that out because it didn't work for a time, but it works once more.
Somebody joked that no issue tagged is good first issue was safe from Ahmed, and then you closed another one. I just got a big laugh about it. I was not trying to tease you on
no, it's okay.
On Slack, but yeah, but you're definitely on a streak. If it was a video game, your character would have like fire coming off them.
Thanks.
Great. Well, any other open topics, open floor? I've got maybe one item to share. It was exciting to see, from the company that created the Walkman, the Wasm Man, show up on the KubeCon floor. It was just a little crazy. The first thing I noticed walking in, if you didn't have a chance to join us at KubeCon, was this, Sony's booth, all these, all their little devices here. They've got a bunch of ML cameras and everything. We're featuring WebAssembly and their little tiny embedded devices that run machine learning models. But if you looked even closer, or if you looked on the other side, this back wall was actually like a huge poster to WebAssembly. Here's a couple of the cameras that they have. I don't know that I've got a good picture of it here, but this back wall was like a huge, like, what is WebAssembly? And I gotta say, beyond the WebAssembly startups, this felt like the first time, seeing it wild out there. And I'm gonna give that to Sony if they want to call this the Wasm. I don't know that it will mean anything to other people as much as it does to me, but it was a neat little demo, that's for sure. You can push all these machine learning models, these really tiny embedded devices. I thought that was just super cool. It was also neat to see, Wasm Edge talking about their support for components. Istio just hitting WebAssembly nonstop. Red Panda, which is a Kafka compatible message bus, did some WebAssembly demos. VMware's WebAssembly Workers was cool, and they were talking about components. So it's just really great to see so many early adopters and key players in the industry just really taking off. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream, and folks that are here can hang out. And then, just like usual, we'll have the best part of the discussion after we stop streaming. So I guess for anybody listening at home, I guess the challenge is